If you start getting frightened of it, then you make it worse. Because you project onto it all kinds of bogies and threats which don't exist in it at all. Whenever you meet a ghost, don't run away. Because the ghost will capture the substance of your fear and materialize itself out of your own substance and will kill you eventually, because it will take over all your own vitality. So then, whenever confronted with a ghost, walk straight into it and it will disappear. We've got to survive. You must survive. That's the great thing we're all working on, and pounding it out day after day in anxiety. Because this is a description of anxiety. Anxiety is the fear that one of a pair of opposites might cancel the other forever. And if by any chance, by any means, you find out that that is not so, you have an entirely new attitude to what human beings are doing, which may be very creative, but which also may be very dangerous. You see through the game. You are only just kidding that you're just poor little me. See, the function of a guru, that is to say a spiritual teacher in India, is to give you a funny look in the eye. Because you come to him and say, Mr. Guru, I have problems. I suffer, and it's a mess, and I can't control my mind, and I'm miserable and depressed, and so on. And he gives you a funny look. And you feel a bit nervous about the way he looks at you. Because he's reading your thoughts. And this man is a great magician. He can read everything that's in you. He knows right down into your unconscious, and you know all the dreadful things you've thought, and all the awful desires you have, and you're rather embarrassed that this man looks right through you and sees them all. But that's not what he's looking at. He's giving you a funny look for quite another reason altogether. Because he sees in you the Brahman, the Godhead, just claiming it's poor little me. That's why he gives you a funny look. And why he seems to see right through you. As if to say, Shiva, oh boy, don't kid me. I know who you are. But you're coming on beautifully in this act. That you're somebody else altogether. And I congratulate you. You're doing a wonderful job. Playing this part, which you call the person, my person. So, it's all very well. Anybody can have ecstasy. Anybody, as a matter of fact, can become aware that he is one with the eternal ground of the universe. But since that's what you are anyway, I'm going to ask, so what? When a hero goes on an adventure, and he leaves his people, and is going to a strange land, he can go away and just hide himself round the corner in an obscure house, and then appear a year later and say, I've been on a heroic journey, and tell all sorts of tales. And they say, prove it. Because they expect him to bring back something which nobody has seen before. Then they believe you've been on a journey. So in the same way, exactly, anybody who goes on a spiritual journey must bring something back. Because if you just say, oh man, it was a gas. Anyone can say that. Now this is why in the doctrines of Buddhism there is a differentiation between two kinds of enlightened beings. They are both forms of Buddha, which is to say the word Buddha means somebody who has awakened, who has discovered the secret behind all this. In other words, all this thing we call life with its frantic concerns is a big act, which you, in your unconscious depth, are deliberately setting up. So you can do one of two things when you discover this. You can become what's called a Pratyeka Buddha. That means a private Buddha, who doesn't tell anything. Or you can become a Bodhisattva. Pratyeka Buddha goes off into his ecstasy and never is seen again. bodhisattva is one who comes back and appears in the everyday world and plays the game of the everyday world by the rules of the everyday world. But he brings with him upaya. He brings with him some way of showing that he's been on the journey, that he's come back, and he's going to let you in on the secret too. If you'll play it cool and also come back to join in the everyday life of everyday people. The first thing then is to discover what indeed you do love, if anything, and you'll find there is something. And then go into the nature of that. Now it's said that selfish people love themselves. Is something which you thought was other than yourself. Even if it be very ordinary things such as ice cream or booze, in the conventional sense, booze is not you, nor is ice cream. It turns into you in a manner of speaking when you consume it, but then you don't have it anymore. And so you look around for more in order to love it once again. But so long as you love it, you see, it's never you. When you love people, even however selfishly you love them, because of the pleasant sensations they give to you, still, it is somebody else that you love. And as you inquire into this, as you follow honestly your own selfishness, many interesting transformations begin to come about in you. One of the most interesting transformations of being directly and honestly selfish, in the same way that, for example, cats are, is that you stop deceiving people. If what you define as you is inseparable from everything which you define as not you, just as front is inseparable from back, then you realize that deep down between self and other there is some sort of conspiracy. If these things always occur in combination and look very different from each other and feel quite different, nevertheless the feeling of difference between them allows each one to exist. And so underneath the opposition or the polarity between self and other, or between any other pair of opposites you can think of, there is something in common, as there is, for example, between figure and background. You can't see a figure without a background. You can't have an organism without an environment. Equally, you can't have a background without a figure, or an environment without organisms in it, or without things in it. You can't have space which is unoccupied by any solid. You cannot have solids not occupying some space. This is absolutely elementary. And yet, we don't realize it. Because, for example, the average person thinks that space is nothing. That it's just a sort of not-there-ness in which there are things. And we are slightly afraid that not-there-ness, that nothingness, that darkness, that the negative poles of all these oppositions will win. That they will eventually swallow up every kind of being and every kind of there-ness. But when you catch on to the game, you realize that that won't happen. Because what is called not existing is quite incapable of being there without the contrast of something called existing. It's like the crest and the trough of a wave. You can't have a wave that's all trough and no crest, just as you can't have a wave which is all crest and no trough. Such a thing has never been manifested in the physical universe. They go together. And that is the secret. You have it on beautifully in this act. But then that you're somebody else altogether. And I congratulate you. You're doing a wonderful job playing this part, which you call the person, my person. So, it's all very well. Anybody can have ecstasy. Anybody, as a matter of fact, can become aware that he is one with the eternal ground of the universe. But since that's what you are anyway, I'm going to ask, so what? When a hero goes on an adventure, and he leaves his people, and is going to a strange land, he can go away and just hide himself round the corner in an obscure house, and then appear a year later and say, I've been on a heroic journey, and tell all sorts of tales. And they say, prove it. Because they expect him to bring back something which nobody has seen before. Then they believe you've been on a journey. So in the same way, exactly.
Game of Thrones, doesn't it? They don't need no fucking dragon.
Now, we come here right at the start to an extremely important principle, which is the different points of view you get when you change your level of magnification. That is to say, you can look at something with a microscope and see it a certain way. You can look at it with the naked eye and see it in a certain way. You look at it with a telescope and you see it in another way. Now, which level of magnification is the correct one? Well, obviously, they're all correct. They're just different points of view. You can, for example, look at a newspaper photograph under a magnifying glass, and where with the naked eye you will see a human face, with the magnifying glass you will just see a profusion of dots, rather meaninglessly scattered. But as you stand away from that collection of dots, which all seem to be separate and apart from each other, they suddenly arrange themselves into a pattern. And you see that these individual dots add up to some kind of sense. Now you'll see at once from this illustration that maybe you, when you take a myopic view of yourself, as most of us do, but you may add up to some kind of sense that is not apparent to you in your ordinary consciousness. When we examine our bloodstreams under a microscope, we see there's one hell of a fight going on. All sorts of microorganisms are chewing each other up. And if we got overly fascinated with our view of our own bloodstreams in the microscope, we should start taking sides, which would be fatal, because the health of our organism depends on the continuance of this battle. What is, in other words, conflict at one level of magnification is harmony at a higher level. Now, could it possibly be, therefore, that we, with all our problems, conflicts, neurosis, The only way to handle danger is to face it. If you start getting frightened of it, then you make it worse. Because you project onto it all kinds of bogies and threats which don't exist in it at all. Whenever you meet a ghost, don't run away. Because the ghost will capture the substance of your fear and materialize itself out of your own substance. And will kill you eventually. Because it will take over all your own vitality. So then, whenever confronted with a ghost, walk straight into it. And it will disappear. We've got to survive. You must survive. That's the great thing we're all working under. And pounding it out day after day.
Your life is your life. Don't let it be clubbed into dank submission. Beyond the watch, there are ways out. There is a light somewhere. It may not be much light, but it beats the darkness. Beyond the watch, the gods will offer you chances. Know them. Take them. He can't beat death, but he can beat death in life, sometimes. And the more often you learn to do it, the more light there will be. Your life is your life. Know it while you have it. You are marvelous. The gods wait to delight in you. If you're going to try, go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. If you're going to try, go all the way. This could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, jobs, and maybe your mind. Go all the way. It could mean not eating for 3 or 4 days. It could mean freezing on a park bench. It could mean jail. It could mean derision, mockery, isolation. Isolation is the gift. All the others are a test of your endurance, of how much you really want to do it. And you'll do it, despite rejection and the worst odds. And it will be better than anything else you can imagine. If you're going to try, go all the way. There is no other feeling like that. You will be alone with the gods, and the nights will flame with fire. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. All the way. All the way. You will ride life straight to perfect laughter.
Generally speaking, you're free till you're about 4 years old. Then you go to grammar school, and then you start becoming demanded and soft. You lose what individualism you have, if you have enough, of course. you retain some of it. But most don't have enough. So you become watchers of game shows, and things like that. Then you work the 8-hour job with almost a feeling of goodness, like you're doing something. You get married like marriage is a victory, and you have children like children is a victory. But most things most people do are a total grind. Marriage, birth, children. It's something they have to do because there's nothing else to do. There's no glory in it, there's no steam, there's no fire. It's very, very flat.
But we know that outside that small band there is a huge range of vibrations to which we have built instruments that are sensitive. Things like cosmic rays, ultraviolet rays, gamma rays, hard X-rays, so on. They're all outside the band of our spectrum. And obviously there are things that are outside the range of our instruments. We may build new instruments someday which will bring into our consciousness other orders of vibration altogether. But yet, as yet, we don't know about them. So you could imagine, you see, the universe is a vast, vast system of
away with doing entirely the wrong thing.
All the variables beyond their control. Did I take enough data into consideration? And if you think it through, you find you never could take enough data into consideration. The data for a decision in any given situation is infinite. So what you do is, you go through the motions of thinking out what you will do about this. But warriors are people who think of all the variables beyond their control and what might happen.
Choice is the act of hesitation that we make before making a decision. It is a mental wobbling. And so we are always in a dither of doubt as to whether we're behaving the right way, doing the right thing, and so on and so forth, and lack a certain kind of self-confidence. And if you see you lack self-confidence, you will make mistakes through sheer fumbling. If you do have self-confidence, you may get away with doing entirely the wrong thing. You have to regard yourself as a cloud in the flesh. Because you see, clouds never make mistakes. Did you ever see a cloud that was misshapen? Did you ever see a badly designed wave? No, they always do the right thing. But if you will treat yourself for a while as a cloud or wave and realize that you can't make a mistake, whatever you do, because even if you do something that seems to be totally disastrous, it'll all come out in the wash somehow or other. Then, through this capacity, you will develop a kind of confidence. And through confidence, you will be able to trust your own intuition. Now, this is the middle way of knowing it has nothing to do with your decision to do this or not. Whether you decide that you can't make a mistake or whether you don't decide it, it's true anyway. You are like cloud and water. Through that realization, without overcompensating in the other direction, you will come to the point where you begin to be on good terms with your own being and to be able to trust your own brain. Each of these lives is the right one. Every path is the right path. Everything
wake up.
This holiday season, pick your power, fuel or battery. Then,
Fuck you.
The legend lives on from the triple full of pride of the American side, coming back from some mill in Wisconsin. As the big freighter...
That's just not going to work for me.
I was having a good dream. Very good dream.
King Agamemnon sent me. He
I'll
needs
speak to your king in the morning.
But my lord, it is morning. They're waiting for you. Are the stories about you true? They say your mother is an immortal goddess. They say you can't be killed.
I wouldn't be bothering with the shield then, would I?
The Thessalonian you're fighting. He's the biggest man I've ever seen. I wouldn't want to fight him.
That's why no one will remember your name.
We should have our war tomorrow when you're better rested. I should have you whipped for your impudence.
Perhaps you should fight.
Achilles. Achilles. Look at the men's faces. You can save hundreds of them. You can end this war with a swing of your sword. Think how many songs they'll sing in your honor. Let them go home to their wives.
Imagine a king who fights his own battles. Wouldn't that be a sight? Of all the warlords loved by the gods, I hate him the most.
We need him, my king.
For now. The gods, I hate him the most.
We need him, my king.
For now.
Is there no one else? Is there no one else?
Who are you, soldier?
Achilles, son of Peleus.
Achilles. I'll remember the name. The ruler of Thessaly carries this scepter. Give it to your king.
He's not my king.
I got your stupid ass to mouth off to me, didn't I? That is an excellent video, too. Fuck you. I've seen The Punisher, and that movie sucks. Go suck a dick, Hasselhoff. I saw that shit in theaters. It fucking sucked. Banning all of you. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you.
You worked the Fisher case 7 years ago.
7 years, 47 days. I'm quite confident of my recollections.
10 years. It's a good deal.
It's an...
my men. Senator Gracchus is to be reinstated. There was a dream that was Rome. It shall be realized. These are the wishes of Marcus Aurelius.
Free the prisoners! Go!
Lucius is safe.
Go to them.
Main units punching east. We are going north on a flank guard mission. We'll tie up with Baker Company from the 41st. Sergeant Collier is with us now. He'll be acting platoon sergeant.
How about me? Good to have you, Don.
Sir.
Nothing matters. Contact on us about you.
All right, all tanks, move forward. Right steer. Left with me, stay abreast.
Let's go right at him. Let's go right at him.
Order, left flank. Let's one march this cocksucker.
Right steer. Take the right flag.
It's coming on.
Fire flag. All right,
Cover, on one.
Barrel's on.
What do you want, Tom?
All right, AP, smash.
You're clear, boy. AP, 500 yards. Fire. Again. Fuck, ready, put it in now. Clear. On the one. God damn it! Fuck! On the wall!
They got Peterson.
It's a fucking beast! Order, flank left! Davis, cross! Flank right!
Copy. Right stick. Reverse left.
Davis is lining up!
Fire! 84. On top, H.
Then shoot the son of a bitch. He's lining up on Roy!
God damn it, I said fire. Fire.
God damn it! Fuck!
Roy's gone.
Who on this left?
It's up to us now.
Bird, get around! Put us on his backside!
Get behind him, we can kill him. No.
God damn it! What's your name? Fight, boy, you stay to fight! I'm headed on line! Come around!
Already got outrun that gun?
No, I got it!
Oh, yeah. Put it there, right side.
Michael, put it up his ass!
When the armor's thin.
I know to fucking hit him!
On you there! On the line!
Shit!
God damn it, I sent me down!
The one with the fast is not that fucking easy! Come on, boy, stay on it! Carter, when I say back up, you back up, left stick. All right. Michael, stand by, I'll call the shot. Roger!
many people I have to ban over and over again. I'm on a banning spree. I just banned 20 people in like 5 minutes. Supposedly 20 people. It's really all the same guy. Or same group. Just funny because his group can barely speak English. Please, please play this one. Yeah, you haven't been watching that long. I started back in like 2012 here. So, yeah. I think, what has it been, like 5 years streaming on the PlayStation? I really wanted to see that one, but it won't go.
The South Pacific, 1942. The U.S. Marine Corps leads the attack on the Pacific Islands of the Japanese Empire. And for the first time in their history, they launch an amphibious assault with tanks.
We knew they would have to have that type of support to knock out defensive positions in amphibious assault.
All of a sudden, our tank hit home. They were throwing everything but the kitchen sink at that thing. People say that I didn't realize there were tanks in the Pacific.
They siege one island fortress after another.
There's no real way to carry a large cannon around the battlefield for direct fire infantry support except a tank.
They face an enemy ready to meet them tank versus tank.
Man, we were firing and firing and firing.
Fighting across a battlefield as wide as the ocean itself.
If they hit them, they're gone.
Tanks go head to head in the Pacific War. Today, the palm-fringed beaches of the South Pacific are a destination for holidaymakers seeking paradise. But in World War II, they would become a blood-soaked graveyard for the U.S. Marine Corps. In December 1941, the Japanese launch a surprise attack against the United States naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Striking at the heart of American power in the Pacific and dragging the U.S. into the Second World War. For more than 50 years, the Japanese have been pursuing a policy of aggressive military expansion. Their empire now stretches halfway across the Pacific Ocean from mainland Asia. The Japanese military machine has been unstoppable, swallowing one island chain after another. From the Marianas to the Gilberts and to the Solomons.
Japan's strategy was pretty effective at this particular point because basically they had managed to run riot all through the southern Pacific. They had things pretty much their own way.
Each island in its possession is now a fortress, bristling with manpower and heavy armor.
The goal was to make it so expensive for the Americans to come back and to counterattack them that the Americans would lose hope and simply give up on recovering or counterattacking the Japanese and seizing back this empire.
But give up, they did not. And in June 1942, with a decisive naval victory at the Battle of Midway, the Americans turned the tide of war.
A common saying is that before Midway, the Japanese never stopped advancing. After Midway, the Japanese never stopped retreating.
The Americans go on the offensive, and it's the Marines who are tasked with rolling back the Japanese Empire across 6,000 kilometers of ocean, with the plan to seize one island stronghold after another until they reach mainland Japan itself. Overshadowed by the achievements of the infantry, the role of the tank in the Pacific War has been untold.
People say, well, I didn't realize there were tanks in the Pacific.
There's very little written about the tanks in the case of the Marine Corps. The infantry always has this strange love-hate relationship with tanks. They don't like to be around the tank because it takes fire. But when you're taking fire from an enemy position, there's nothing quite like that direct fire cannon and those heavy machine guns and that armored protection to help eliminate enemy positions. There's no real way to carry a large cannon around the battlefield for direct fire infantry support except a tank.
The Marines' first hurdle is Guadalcanal, which they seek to take with overwhelming force, including 20,000 troops and more than 50 light tanks. But it becomes a protracted and bloody campaign. Not only are the Pacific Islands garrisoned by tens of thousands of soldiers, but the Japanese are also fanatical in defense.
They never give up. You either kill them or get killed. This is war. They'll give up.
And crucially, the U.S. Marines' frontline armored weapon, the M3 light tank, proves a failure.
The light tanks did not possess enough firepower with their small 37mm cannons to do much against the major Japanese defenses.
So the light tanks of the Marine Corps are replaced with the Sherman. The medium M4A2 Sherman tank, with a 75mm main cannon, its firepower is a significant upgrade in the Marines' armored capability.
How do they compare? Like night and day. It was kind of like comparing a small Ford to a big Cadillac.
With the lessons learned at Guadalcanal, a victory that takes 6 months and comes at a cost of more than 7,000 casualties, the U.S. Marines move on to their next objective, Tarawa. 6,000 kilometers from Tokyo and part of the Gilbert Island chain, Tarawa is at the outermost edge of the Japanese Pacific Empire. It's a remote and sparsely populated atoll of tiny islands and coral reefs.
The Japanese realized, having executed several amphibious assaults themselves, that the best place to defeat an amphibious assault is at the water's edge, where the troops are still wading ashore, where they're still knee-deep and struggling. So most of their defenses were sited around the perimeter of the island.
So confident is Japanese Rear Admiral Keiji Shibasaki, he boasts that 1 million men could not take the island in 1,000 years. Dug in behind the defensive seawall at Tarawa are 5,000 soldiers, 65 heavy guns, and 7 tanks.
These islands were so small that the entire perimeter of the island could be fortified. So there was no chance except to assault these things frontally.
Advancing on Tarawa, the Americans now have 14 medium tanks, dozens of light tanks, and 20,000 Marines. November 20th, 1943. At 0500 hours, the American attack begins with a massive naval bombardment. Its aim, to destroy the Japanese defenses and breach the seawall.
We could see the planes dive bombing the island. The heavy cruisers were there. They had 12-inch guns, and they were blasting the island like crazy.
What I was worried about is I was worried about one of them things might hit me.
At 0900 hours, the first wave of Marines go in.
On a small island like Tarawa, the only thing you can do is attack right into the teeth of the defenses, just kind of slog ashore and try to do the best you can in this frontal assault.
Three waves of Amtracs lead the attack, followed by C Company with 14 Shermans. A kilometer from the beaches, they're unloaded on a coral reef.
Then you go in the lagoon. Then you go in. And that's when things got rough.
Because it's now that the U.S. tankers come within range of the Japanese heavy guns.
All our positions on all beaches opened on enemy landing craft. The Americans appeared to be surprised and confused.
Wading ashore through 3 feet of water under murderous fire, the tankers encounter an unforeseen hazard. The shell holes created by their own naval bombardment.
All of a sudden, our tank hit a hole. They was under fire. I mean, they were throwing everything but the kitchen sink at that thing. So I opened the hatch and slid down the back of the tank into the water. And I don't know how I did it without getting hit, because all I could hear on the water was put all over.
And of the 6 tanks I had on that beach, 3 of them drowned out in the water. But we did get ashore. I got ashore with 3 vehicles.
Far from being destroyed, the Japanese seawall is still intact, barring their way and effectively trapping them on the beach.
The tank you can't drive over that 5-foot seawall.
And they have built, in some cases, positions actually into or just atop the seawall. It was a very effective defense with interlocking fields of fire.
What remains of C Company must now run the gauntlet of the anti-tank guns, desperate to find a breach through the seawall.
And if they could manage to fire into the area behind the tracks, they could penetrate the very thin armor there. They would simply pump rounds into these tanks until they were destroyed or caught fire.
From Bale's company find a gap in the seawall and make it off the beach. It has now taken the U.S. Marines 6 hours to establish a beachhead on Tarawa. And the cost has been high, with 50% of their tank capability already destroyed.
Looking back on it, we're pretty naive. because the intelligence did not reveal the true nature of the Japanese defenses, the tenacity of the Japanese.
But with the seawall breached, the tables have now been turned.
It was strange. All the Japanese defenses were oriented seaward, and we were on shore.
So that once you could get in behind these things, you could knock them out by attacking the rear entrances without coming under so much intense fire.
You had to find the opening because these things were dug into the ground and they were covered with mounds and mounds of sand. We realized you had to start firing in the openings. But we had not gone more than 100 yards inland and we ran into this Japanese tank showed up. When I saw him, and I caught him out of the corner of my eye, this movement. And I realized what it was. The Japanese tank stuck its turret up over a revetment. I told the gunner, and he started to traverse over there. He probably had to traverse that gun 30, 40 degrees to get on that target. And he fired before I told him to. And he missed. That was a prepared position for the Japanese tank, where it could sit there and then drop, pull up, put its turret and gun up over the revetment and fire. And that's what it did.
The Hago light tank, armed with a 37mm main gun. In a straight fight, it should prove no match for the medium Sherman M4.
That projectile hit right on the end of our gun tube. Took a piece out of our gun tube and fragments came down the tube and it lit up like a Christmas tree. It was a lucky shot. It was a lucky shot.
Bale's tank is disabled, but he has backup.
The other tank that was with us fired. And that other tank fired, and all I know is to move the turret off.
We call them a tin can. And that's what they are. I mean, compared with our tanks.
It takes 3 days for the Marines to clear the atoll. 4,700 Japanese are killed, including Rear Admiral Shibasaki, with only 17 choosing to surrender. And in the space of just 76 hours, the Marines themselves lose nearly 1,000.
Tarawa caused a major change in the way the United States viewed the war and the attitudes particularly, because up to that point, on the home front, movies had always, depicted people with relatively bloodless shoulder wounds or people dying with a noble, quip on their lips. But for the first time, the Commandant of the Marine Corps authorized the release of photographs of American casualties, including dead Marines on the beach, dead Marines floating in the lagoon. And he made the comment, "There is no royal road to Tokyo."
Having punctured the Japanese Empire's first line of defense in the Pacific at Tarawa in the Gilbert Islands, the Americans now advance on the Marianas and the island of Saipan.
The Japanese considered the Marianas actually the last defensive line before the home islands.
Much bigger than Tarawa and halfway to Japan itself, the Marianas hold the strategic key to the war in the Pacific. The Japanese know that if their airstrips on the Marianas are captured, American superfortress bombers will for the first time be within range of Tokyo itself.
So they were prepared to defend these things with a major effort.
June 15th, 1944. The U.S. Marines launched their amphibious assault.
Saipan was the first of the real large land masses that the Marines attacked during the course of the Pacific War. So the Japanese could not have as heavy a defense of the beaches themselves.
We did not encounter the bomb craters and all off the beach. We didn't encounter the heavy Japanese gunfire from emplacements. And as far as I was concerned, I got my company ashore pretty easily.
Unlike on Tarawa, the main Japanese defenses are situated behind the shoreline. And as the U.S. Marines advance off the beaches, they discover the Japanese are waiting for them, dug into a network of almost impregnable bunkers.
Oh, they had pillboxes all over, and they were connected underground. They were in a pillbox over here firing, and before you know it, they'd go underground to another one and come up again.
Which means the U.S. Marines have to clear and destroy each defensive position, one by one.
So the Marines not only had to kill the defenders of position, they had to physically destroy that position to keep it from being reoccupied.
And the only way they can do that is to burn them out, using the newest weapon in the U.S. Marines armory. The Satan Flame Tank is a reconditioned Stuart M3 light tank. Its 37mm main cannon refitted with a Canadian-designed Ronson flamethrower.
It was an absolutely deadly weapon against any sort of fixed position, because it doesn't really kill the enemy by burning, but it consumes all the oxygen and suffocates even somebody inside a closed position.
With a range of just 55 meters, the flamethrowers are only effective at close quarters.
The flame tank had to approach within a certain distance, rendering itself vulnerable to enemy counterattack by infantry with these little grenade mines, or a suicide weapon they call the lunge mine, an anti-tank mine on the end of a bamboo pole that they would come up and shove against the side of the tank. They had a lot of success sticking these against the engine doors on the light tanks, where the armor was much thinner.
The Marines' advance now becomes a game of cat and mouse with the Japanese suicide bombers, with the Sherman supporting both infantry and flame tanks.
So it was simply a matter of working with the infantry and slow going and digging these people out.
Then we went down about 1,000 yards toward a big pillbox, about 20 foot high. I mean the big one. I started throwing shells in there. We fired about, I'll get 8 or 10 shells of that thing. And nothing would happen. They just fell off. Just like me shooting my BB gun at my barn out here. They just hit it and roll off. Can you imagine? They never can get through that.